afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We've got another debate show coming up for you this afternoon where we're going to be looking at, the really intriguing topic of the Sky Bet Championship playoff race with so many clubs in the mix for the top six. I'm your host, Alfie Burns, and joining me is my colleague, Marcus. Marcus, how are you getting on this afternoon?
Yeah, really well. Thanks, Alfie. The Championship, a notoriously difficult division to predict, but I'm excited to give this one my best shot. It's a really mouth-watering race we've got for those top six spots going into the final few months of the season.
Absolutely. So many twists and turns to come, I'm sure, but we're going to put our necks on the line and try and pick out the four that we think are going to be in there come the end of the season. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter this afternoon. So if you're joining us, get yourselves in the comments and let us know your thoughts on the Championship's promotion race, who you can see in third, fourth, fifth and sixth. And if you want to be bold like we are, then get yourselves in the comments and let us know who you think is going to come out on top at Wembley late in May. Before we get going, Marcus, we'll just touch on the top two quickly. I've got it down on the notes as Fulham minimum automatic promotion, probably the title as well from where they are. And it's safe to assume with Bournemouth that minimum playoffs. Would you agree with that or not?
On the whole, yeah. I think the ship has sailed with Fulham as far as I'm concerned. I think they're comfortably the best team in the division. They could virtually probably field a second string 11 for the rest of the season and still get top two, in my opinion. Bournemouth, I am way less sold, to be honest. They've won 3 on the bounce against Birmingham, Barnsley and Blackpool. However, I haven't been convinced by any of them, to be honest. Barnsley were arguably the better team in that 1-0 defeat. And I think they've been very reliant on Mark Travers in the last 2 wins against Blackpool and Birmingham. So I think there's a way to go for Bournemouth. I do think Scott Parker's having some stutterings, really. I do think they are, despite that form, on a little bit of a downward spiral at the moment. And I'm not sure that their business, obviously, Kiefer Moore picked up an injury at the weekend as well. He's going to be out for a couple of months. I'm not sure whether signing all these players on deadline day, though it looks amazing on paper, will actually turn out to be what's best for them, and we'll see them kick on as we edge towards the business end.
Yeah, but we're having them down as definitely in the top six come the end of the season, yeah?
Yeah, it's an 11-point cushion. So at this stage, it's going to be hard to drop all the way out of the top six. So yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, Bournemouth to finish in the top six as a minimum.
Absolutely. Let's get into the chasing pack then. So from third, fourth, fifth and sixth at the minute are Blackburn, QPR, Huddersfield and Middlesbrough. They're currently in the playoff positions, but they're getting cut adrift of the top two a little bit. And there's a real surge of teams just coming up behind them in the playoff places. We'll start with Blackburn. They've fallen out of the top two recently. As you mentioned, their Bournemouth have won 3 games on the spin and have moved back into the automatic promotion places. And I kind of look at Blackburn and I think they need to sort of get themselves back on track as quickly as possible because, it's definitely not out of the question that they drop out of the top 6 entirely unless they turn things around. Marcus, what are your thoughts on Blackburn at the minute?
I'm slightly concerned, to be honest, winless in 3 without scoring in any of those games. And I do think that even though they were able to retain most of their best players in the January transfer window, those contract situations around the likes of Rothwell, even the manager, Tony Mowbray's deal expiring at the end of the season, is not great for the mindset of just looking ahead and just how much their commitment and how much their hearts are going to be in it going into those crunch encounters at the end of the season. Ewood Park hasn't been the fullest of home stadiums this season. I'm not sure how much that kind of counts, but when you've got the likes of Sheffield United, the momentum they've got under Heckingbottom with a lot of home games to come, and the likes of Middlesbrough and Forest sort of hoping to catch up with Blackburn in the months to come. I do think that could maybe be something that goes under radar as a factor. Depth-wise, I think they did some good January business. I think Ryan Giles is an outstanding coup to get in on loan for the second half of the season. Harry Pickering's coming back from injury as well, so they're well covered in that area. But I do think Giles is a bit of star quality for the level. I think this could possibly be the last spell we see of him in the second tier. So it's going to be close. I can't see them flirting with the automatic promotion places again, sadly. Obviously, they've got the individual quality, the likes of Brereton, Diaz, Rida Kadra, Rothwell. The defensive three had built a really strong relationship as well in the last few months. So I think they'll just about stay in the playoffs, but I think there could be some nervy moments, and I don't expect them to be sort of pushing the top two as much as maybe a couple of other sides.
No, big game for Blackburn as well tonight in the Championship against West Brom, who are a side that we're going to touch on later. Marcus, do you think that it's important that Blackburn get a result, against somebody like West Brom, just to get that belief back after recent weeks?
Definitely, yeah. It's been a poor run, and you can't afford to let that momentum continue, because of the form of the sides beneath them. Must be quite intimidating looking over their shoulders. It's going to be important it's a good time to play West Brom. I know they've got a good manager, but looking at their performances towards the back end of Valérien Ismaël's reign, and even the last match as well at Sheffield United, they're not a side that's competing like a top six club team at the moment. So I think it's a good time to play them, a good time to go to the Hawthorns, where they might be able to frustrate the home crowd very early on. So I do expect them to get something, whether it be 3 points. I think it's a tough ask. But yeah, they should be confident of at least taking a point away from the Hawthorns.
Just behind them are Queen's Park Rangers, who have been steady all season, really, and in the top six mix. I guess the biggest question for QPR at the minute, Marcus, is whether they can sort of hold off the chasing pack.
Absolutely, yeah. I do think they are a little bit over-reliant on some individual brilliance to help get them over the line. They haven't been putting teams away comfortably this season. It has been a case of relying a little bit on their home form, particularly earlier on in the campaign, and some lower margin victories. I'm trying not to let any recency bias cloud my judgment in making these predictions, but that was an absolute shocker of a result to lose 1-0 at Barnsley. A chance to pick up 3 points and really put themselves close to Bournemouth in pushing for the top two. So to lose that game after it had been such a long time since the Tykes had picked up a victory must have been really disappointing, and will have enthused the clubs around them that maybe they're another side that's catchable inside the top six at the moment. They're compared to Blackburn, they're above them on PPG. They're still third on points per game, so they're in a great position in that regard. But once again, I do think their best runs and best performance level has come in the games that has got us to this point, and I possibly can't see them building on that or even staying at the same level for the final, what we've got, sort of 15, 16 games. So I think it's going to be tricky. I think QPR are going to be one of the teams where it gets a bit nervy, and they're going to be going into the last 5 games, maybe sort of flirting sort of in and out of the top six, just because of the strength of the chasing pack.
Yeah, and you spoke about form there. One of the form sides at the minute is Huddersfield Town. They're 14 games unbeaten across all competitions, and they've been one of the division's surprise packages this season. I don't think anybody had Huddersfield down as playoff contenders this year, but here they are, sitting 5th in the table as we speak. Marcus, a word on Huddersfield and whether you've been surprised, impressed, and whether they can maintain this.
I've been so impressed. I was worried for them at the start of the season after 2 consecutive battles against relegation. Carlos Corberán deserves so much credit. He had so many doubters at the start of the season. Their summer recruitment has been very good. The likes of Colwill, Matty Pearson, and even Lee Nichols in between the sticks. That was quite a surprising signing for me. Someone that was a backup goalkeeper at Milton Keynes Dons last season comes in and is one of the key performers in a championship playoff pushing side. So yeah, their recruitment sort of team deserves a lot of credit, but I do think they've been overperforming. They've played more games than the majority of clubs around them, and even though it's been a brilliant season and one where they've performed much better than I certainly expected, I do think they are going to fall away and make way for some of the stronger clubs just on the verge of breaking into the top 6. Maybe they could make it interesting. I think Danny Ward's had an outstanding season, sort of out of nowhere, considering what direction his career was heading in the last few seasons. There's been very, very tough to beat as well, as you point out. So they could keep themselves in touching distance going into the final few weeks of the season. But I do see Huddersfield's trajectory sadly heading a little bit closer to mid-table rather than maintaining a spot in sort of fourth or fifth or sixth where they're around now.
Yeah, Huddersfield really the epitome of whether you'd rather have the points on the board or the games in hand at the moment. They've got the points on the board and are currently fifth. Down in sixth then is Middlesbrough, who are looking a real force under Chris Wilder. I don't know whether this is a bold thing to say, given that they're sixth and there's so many teams above them in the table. But for me, Borough, out of the current top six, look the ones and feel the ones that are the most nailed on to finish inside the playoff places. Thoughts on that, Marcus? Would you agree?
Definitely, 100%. I'm well on the bandwagon with this Borough side under Chris Wilder. I think they did some excellent January business. It's given them a depth of quality in the squad that should stand them in good stead compared to some of the sides around them, which maybe don't have as strong backup players to come on if they do suffer injuries. The system is so strong under Wilder. Everyone knows their roles. We saw Balogun and Connolly come into great effect against Derby County. They maybe haven't had the regularity of the minutes that they would have been hoping for since coming in January. I think that just speaks to the atmosphere and the environment and how competitive it is at the Riverside at the moment. I think I would probably be surprised if, whether it be by automatic promotion or the playoffs, Middlesbrough weren't promoted this season. I can see Wilder taking them right to a level of where he took Sheffield United in 2019-20. Whether that happens next season or the season after, I'm not so sure, but I'm really sold on Middlesbrough, to be honest. I think the performances of level of the players has just gone completely in the right direction since he took over compared to how they were faring under Neil Warnock. And they've got a nice blend of youth and experience in the side, got some players to come back from injury as well. So, yeah, I think Middlesbrough are definitely one to watch going into the second half of the season. And it will be probably the team that Scott Parker is most worried about looking over his shoulders at, who's in and around the top six at the moment.
Absolutely exciting times at the Riverside Stadium. So that's the top six as it is. Next up, we're going to get into those that are just hovering outside the playoff places. We've broken the next section into two parts. We're going to discuss Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United and West Brom first. They're the three teams that are directly outside the playoff places at the moment. Nottingham Forest and Sheffield United have changed managers, Steve Cooper and Paul Heckingbottom, going in there respectively and doing great jobs, and they're both coming on strong and really pushing towards the top six now. West Brom have obviously made a change by bringing in Steve Bruce in recent weeks, and he's been tasked with getting West Brom back into the playoff mix and moving back up towards the top six with a result really tonight against Blackburn Rovers. Marcus, we'll start with Forest and Sheffield United, who have rolled the dice and come on the right side of that with Cooper and Heckingbottom leading their clubs back up into the playoff mix. Let's just discuss firstly Forest. What are your thoughts on them and their chances of getting into the top six?
I think they've got a great chance. If you take out that portion of the season, I think only Fulham have more points than them. The portion of the season under Chris Hughton, obviously. So looking at the table, it almost paints Forest should be higher up, considering the way they've performed and been able to sustain that level since maybe I think it was late September that Hughton ended up leaving the City ground. So they're in a great position. Brennan Johnson and Keenan Davis are incredibly tough to handle. If you are able to put a lid on them, then you've got the likes of Spence and Zinkernagel to deal with. They've also got players to come off the bench. I back Cooper in this situation. He's experienced now. He's got to a playoff semi-final. He's got to the playoff final with Swansea last season, and even going back to 2019-20, it was on the final day that Swansea were able to pit, Nottingham Forest coincidentally, to finish in the playoff places, and that experience will ensure that Cooper keeps believing right up until the final minutes. I know they've played a little bit more than a couple of the teams around them, and they still do have a lot of work to do despite breaking into the top six last midweek with that win at Blackburn Rovers. But it was a good point considering the week that they had against Stoke City this weekend, and I think they've got a great chance. It's so clear to see that they're heading in the right direction, both off the pitch and on the pitch. And it was a statement of intent to keep Brennan Johnson, despite the type of transfer fees that were bandied about in January. So, yeah, I think Forest are in a very good position. They've still got a lot of work to do. Maybe when Lewis Grabban comes back towards the end of the season, that could be important and something that swings the pendulum in their favour, because, of course, there is a lot of clubs around them. But I think Forest will be confident of taking care of their own business, and with the sort of fading fortunes of the likes of QPR, possibly Blackburn, even Bournemouth, I think will suffer a blip at some point in the remainder of the campaign. I think they should definitely be confident of finishing in the top six just because of the direction they've been headed in ever since Steve Cooper arrived.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch Forest because Cooper's a manager that traditionally finishes the season strongly, as you mentioned there, Marcus, with his form at Swansea previously. But Forest in the last couple of years have tailed off from promising positions. So it's going to be interesting to see if that Cooper can have the desired effect there. In terms of Sheffield United, Paul Heckingbottom's done a fantastic job. And one thing that stood out for me since Heckingbottom has taken charge is the fact that Sheffield United are just so much better at the back. They're a lot more solid defensively, and they've got games in hand on the teams around them. What are your thoughts on the Blades?
Well, the way it's fallen and the postponements that have changed their calendar, I think, could really fall in their favour. I think it was almost sort of 3 weeks they didn't play after winning at Craven Cottage towards the back end of last year, which was a statement victory in itself. Fulham were playing really well at the time as well. So they got 5 of their next 6 matches at Bramall Lane, 11 of the final 17. Now, the way they've been performing on home soil, that has to be seen as a huge positive. Obviously, they got the games in hand. I don't really see that as an advantage somewhat. I mean, you can't just look at those and add 3 points onto their tally. It is going to have a telling on their squad and the fitness of it, and also losing David McGoldrick and Ryan Brewster to injury in recent weeks, it will probably hurt them towards the back end. It's going to be interesting to see how the likes of Daniel Jebberson does if he does get some minutes, because Billy Sharp is going to need that support, and McBurney's really struggled with injury this season and is not playing with the confidence or level that he was in the Premier League for the Blades, or even with Swansea City in the Championship before earning that move. As you say, it's an immense positive to see how well they've been defending. Chris Basham looks back to the level that he was when they were competing in the Premier League. So I was kind of looking for ways to doubt Sheffield United when just making my notes for this, because of how poor they have been at times this season. However, with the fixture list the way it is, 11 out of 17 games at home is a huge proportion compared to the teams around them. And considering just how strong they've been at Bramall Lane, I think that puts them in a great position. And yeah, it's going to be tight, but I think Sheffield should be confident. And with all of the supporters rallying behind Heckingbottom, they're going to be tough to stop in the final few months.
As for West Brom, then they've slipped as low as 9th in recent weeks. I think it's 3 defeats on the spin for the Baggies, but they've brought Bruce in with the view of getting back up into the promotion race. Paul Heckingbottom said last week that he is absolutely confident from Sheffield United's point of view that West Brom will be one of the sides up there come the end of the season. Marcus, do you agree with that? Do you think Bruce can deliver playoff football?
No, I completely disagree, to be honest. I don't like the Steve Bruce appointment, to be honest. I do think it is a little bit backward. You look at how he did with Aston Villa in the Championship, which was the last time he sort of had an extended run at a job. And although they got to a playoff final, they probably should have done a lot better looking at the players that were in that squad. I am concerned because for a period of time where they fell out of the automatic promotion picture, it did seem like it was just they were fluffing their opportunities. However, those opportunities now are not being created at anywhere near as regular intervals. The Daryl Dike injury came at a really inconvenient time. I'm not sure what Steve Bruce offers that's so revolutionary that's going to galvanise the fan base and the group of players. He said before that he doesn't really care too much for tactics. It's going to be tough. That they're going to need to win a lot of games, and when you look at how they've performed in the last few months, and even sort of in the Premier League last season, I feel like they went down in a really horrible way. That the fact that they basically had nothing to play for the final few months, the gap was so large that sort of affected some of the players' mentalities and the belief going into this season. I don't see them as anywhere near as much of a threat to the playoff picture as the likes of Sheffield United or Nottingham Forest. It's an interesting transition for West Brom. I've had my reservations about quite a lot of their decisions that they've made in terms of recruitment of players and managers. Yeah, I'm not feeling great about them at all, to be honest. They could get a win over Blackburn tonight, and then you're looking up. But I think come the end of the season, in comparing the performance levels of them compared to the sides around them, I can't build a case to push them back into that top six. So despite what Heckingbottom's saying, Bruce deserves the respect given what he's achieved in his managerial career, but I can't see him turning it around at West Bromwich Albion, at least in the final few months of this season.
No, there's definitely a lot for Bruce to do at West Brom, and I think out of the three teams that we've just discussed there, I think that they are the ones that are probably at this moment in time the least likely to get up back into the top six picture. Moving even further down the table, because this is the Championship and you can rule absolutely nothing out. We've got Luton, Preston, Coventry and Stoke, who are all within 6 points of the playoffs. So we definitely cannot rule them out. Marcus, just briefly brushing over this, who do you think out of those four teams is most likely for a surge at the top six? And who, even beneath that, could you see potentially coming strong in the final third of the season?
Well, first off, Stoke, I think, just because of the squad depth that they've got compared to the others. Luton and Coventry are playing great at the moment. It's really enjoyable to see that the project in place at both clubs, particularly Luton, considering their transfer budget. I think those two are definitely clubs that we're going to be talking about in this kind of race for years to come if they don't manage to break the top six this season. It's clearly a project under Nathan Jones, and the job Mark Robins has done at Coventry has been incredible. They've both smashed the recruitment in recent years as well. I just think their squads are a little bit thin when you're needing to produce the kind of run where you're winning at such a regular basis week in, week out to really gain on those sides above you. Stoke City suffered an injury crisis that saw them fall away from the playoffs, and losing Harry Souttar out of the back three, even though they had decent players to come in for him, was huge. A real huge player and a rock at the back and a leader in the Stoke side. I'm sure he'll be a huge boost for them next season. I do think it'll probably be too little, too late for Stoke, although they are clearly heading in the right direction under Michael O'Neill. So this is an opportunity to try and make themselves competitive and just keep building for next season, because they have got a great squad at their disposal. I think at times this season it looked like they were maybe one of the more likely sides to challenge the likes of Bournemouth and Fulham for automatic promotion. So there's the foundations are there at the Bet365 stadium. I just think they've maybe fallen a little bit too far. Preston have got the worst goal difference and points per game out of that quartet that you've just reeled off, I think between 13th and 9th or something like that. So it would be a big ask for them, but clearly going very well under Ryan Lowe. It'll be interesting to see just how many more goals Cameron Archer can get, because he's just adjusted to Championship football incredibly well. This could be, we've got to enjoy it while it lasts, I would say, because I could see him maybe battling for a space in the Villa first team next season. Beneath them, I'm not sure. Blackpool have had a great season. It was pretty cruel the way they lost it at home to Bournemouth on Saturday. Josh Bowles is playing so well that they probably won't be able to keep hold of him in the summer, but Neil Critchley deserves so much credit for the job he's doing, that they probably fancy themselves to be in this little group that's just below the sort of more official chasing pack. But apart from them, I can't see anyone below Blackpool. There'll be some clubs possibly pushing for a top half finish. I don't think it's that of Birmingham's sights if they can produce some of the form that they showed at the start of the season, but I'm not sure. Out of those four, I'd probably say Stoke are the most likely after their recent upturn in form.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that you're right as well in terms of it might just be a little bit much for these four clubs to get up into the top six picture, given the strength of what is above them at this moment in time. But Preston and Stoke in particular, I think, are building for a really exciting sort of 18 months under their respective managers. I think they're both the two clubs that are moving, massively in the right direction. I guess, before we wrap up, let's sort of run through who we think are going to finish third, fourth, fifth and sixth this season, Marcus.
Right, so in third place, I'm going for Bournemouth. I think they might miss out. Before saying that, I should probably say who's going to replace them in second place, and that's Middlesbrough. I'm so sold on them. They are 9 points off of Bournemouth at the moment, so there is a long way to go. But I just see them two sides heading in completely different directions now. Bournemouth are nowhere near at the levels that they showed at the start of the season. I think Kiefer Moore's injury could be quite costly considering Dominic Solanke's drop-off in form as well. And I kind of see some similarities between them and Ipswich Town in League One, just sort of too many big egos and high profile players. And I'm also not too sold on Scott Parker as a manager, to be honest. I think he should have done a lot better with Fulham in the Premier League last season. And is possibly getting these jobs more off his reputation as a player and as an ambassador than his raw coaching ability. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months for them. We have seen even last season they were very up and down under Tyndall and then Woodgate. So yeah, I think Bournemouth, they should have the individual quality to hold on really, but I think they might just fall away and Borough will be able to pip them. Borough, for me, they've got to play Fulham one more time in their final 16 games. The other 15, they're favourites. In my opinion, in their current guys, Middlesbrough are the second best team in the Championship. Whether that will be enough to get over that sort of 9-point cushion that the Cherries already have on them, it will be a tough ask, but they're only going in one direction, in my opinion. And I think, yeah, so they will be able to capitalise it if Bournemouth do slip up, as we have seen in the last couple of months. So third, I've got the Cherries. Fourth place, Blackburn Rovers to hang on. I think they might get to a sort of nervy position and then prop themselves up. I can see a little gap developing between sort of third and then fourth, fifth and sixth and the other chasing clubs. But just think the individual qualities definitely there. Brereton Diaz will probably get back scoring, the likes of Kadja and Dolan and Gallagher around him. And that newfound defensive solidity that they seem to stumble across after the heavy defeat against Fulham could stand them in good stead. They've had a tremendous home record as well this season. Fifth place, I'm going for Sheffield United. Again, I tried to talk myself out of this one because I don't think they're most easy on the eye side, and they have been getting quite a few maybe narrow victories, but I can't ignore how many home games they've got coming up and how brilliant they've been at Bramall Lane. I think under Heckingbottom, it's 7 wins, 2 draws and 1 loss in the league. If they can replicate that, then they'll get in the playoffs, no problem. And then finally, sixth place, I've gone for Nottingham Forest, just to basically save themselves and break into what could be I can see about 4 teams fighting for 6th spot come the final game of the season, but I think Forest and the overwhelming momentum at the sitting ground at the moment, I think they might just get there. QPR, Stoke and West Brom, I think, could possibly be in with a shout in the final few weeks of the season, but I think QPR are possibly reliant on a handful of players where the other sides around them aren't. So I think Forest, the 6th spot, I can't deny Steve Cooper after what he's done this season. So yeah, sorry to QPR fans. Mark Warburton's done a sensational job, and I'm sure he's standing them in good stead for next season and a potential return to the Premier League in the next few years. But I don't think it'll be this season. So that's Bournemouth 3rd, Blackburn 4th, Sheffield United 5th, and Forest in 6th.
You're picking a winner from Wembley?
I am, and it's Nottingham Forest, which I think is maybe a little bit of a surprise. But yeah, I just look at the managers and I can't deny Steve Cooper. There's still a lot of work for them to do to finish in the playoffs just on its own and establishing their place in there. But that City Ground atmosphere over the last few weeks, those 2 FA Cup upsets, maybe that is a bit of a recency bias creeping in, but I just can't deny them that the momentum's there. I think if Bournemouth don't get automatic promotion, they'd be in quite a bad state for the playoffs anyway. And then I think maybe Forest's individual quality against one of Blackburn or Sheffield United in the final might just get them over the line. So yeah, I think I'm going for 6th and 7th place in the current table to get promoted. So yeah, it can be interesting to see how this one develops. But yeah, I think Forest to win the playoffs, if they get in there, they'll definitely fancy their chances.
Yeah, you want to get a wager on that, Marcus. I think I backed Fulham and Bournemouth. Not when they last played each other in the Championship. I thought that would be the top 2 as it would stay. So I'll stand by that. I've got Middlesbrough in 3rd and QPR in 4th. I'm probably expecting QPR just to hang in there a little bit like you are with Blackburn. And then I've sort of got 2 from Sheffield United, Huddersfield, Blackburn, and Forest. I'll go with Sheffield United. I think you make a great point, Mark, about the home fixtures that they've got. They've been far better under Heckingbottom, a lot better at the back, so I'll have them in 5th. And then, given I cover them quite a lot, I think I'll back Huddersfield Town to upset the bookmakers and get themselves into 6th. And I think that from those 4, Middlesbrough, QPR, Sheffield United and Huddersfield, I think that I'd be back in Middlesbrough to come out on top at Wembley. That concludes this afternoon's debate show. Thanks for joining me, Marcus. Some real good insight there. I think you've had a comment in as well, just sort of talking up how good your punditry was. So I'll flash that up for you. So that'll give you a nice little ego boost. Thanks to anybody that's joined us across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter and got themselves in the comments. It's always good to hear from you. We'll see you again soon.